The Date Festival, I've kind of reached my limit on continuing to fund the Date Festival at such dramatic losses every year. We've been talking about it now for a couple of years. We really need to decide where this money's going to come from. You know, several of us have lost our SID funding. We can't help local nonprofits anymore serving our communities, but we have money to subsidize a large county property that can't make ends meet. We need to find some solution to that. Money's going to become very tight as we start talking about the $40 million deficit, operating deficit. So I don't have solutions. That's Supervisor Perez's backyard, looking to his leadership on how to figure this one out. But we really need to figure out where we're going to go with this. PSAC is going to bump up to 34 positions. 8 of them were not part of PSAC, but I've talked with folks, and that's a good thing for PSAC to put them all under one house, so I don't have any issues with that. Animal Services, however, is going to get $560,000 from CARES funding, although the board did not authorize that. So we're putting the cart before the horse here, where we're approving $560,000, but we haven't approved the CARES funding through separate agenda item. We need to make sure we clean that up, and I understand that's coming the next regular board meeting next month to clean that up. So that's good news. And then the Sheriff's Department seems to be making some really good decisions on reorganizing their operations. They make a point in there about the use of sworn versus civilian for those non-essential public safety positions. And I truly appreciate everything that the sheriff is doing on that. It's refreshing to see new ideas come through. I had heard that there was going to be a problem with the transfer of the fleet services going over to the sheriff, in that the sheriff was going to use sworn officers to manage fleet services instead of civilian. What we're doing today, I've got assurances that there will be civilian employees. They'll report to one sworn officer. So I think we're in a good shape there. So I would move approval of this, with the only corrections being that those 4 positions will be deleted after the board approves the promotional positions. So that would be my only recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Jeffries, and point well taken. Before I call on Supervisor Spiegel and Supervisor Hewitt, as far as the Date Festival is concerned, quite frankly, we have been looking at other funding streams potentially, and as well looking at the model that you had suggested, Orange County, to see what they're doing and potentially doing something where it's a private-public partnership, if you will, or take on an initiative where potentially back in that area, and maybe even countywide, if it was so desired, some sort of facilities district, if you will, or some sort of initiative that can help with the costs associated with the maintenance and operations of those fairgrounds. And so I think eventually where you're gonna hear knocking on your door, because you have representatives on that fair board, they'll be knocking on your door very soon to have these type of discussions with you, as well as they have just recently knocked on my door. And I mentioned to them the importance of making sure that we are transparent with this process and that we have to make this change. And I agree with you 100% on that front, Supervisor. So Supervisor Spiegel, then Supervisor Hewitt, followed by Supervisor Washington.
I also agree. I was commenting on the fair. Having attended the last couple, it's a great event, but it's a cost to the entire county, and it's usually more centric in the Coachella Valley area. And there are opportunities, I think, with another nonprofit or some other organization to run the fair, relieve some of our staff not being so integrally involved. So I'm certainly interested on us moving forward on that. We do have a year or less, so if whoever's going to take that on, obviously this year we won't be able to have a fair, but in 2022, you know, it's going to take some time, so they may not even be able to get up on their feet then. So we need to make sure, you know, we have to maintain the property until something's happening. So we don't want to continue to spend money if that's something that long-term that we're not looking at doing. I enjoyed it, so I'm not pushing to stop it. I think it really, you have thousands of people that attend it on a daily basis, great activities. lots of community, which is what we really need. So if we can find a way, creative way to get it, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Spiegel. Supervisor Hewitt, followed by Supervisor Washington.
Yeah, not to sound redundant or anything, but I'm going to echo in on the previous two comments, and especially, Chair, if we could bring this, sometime, it's not super urgent right now, but when it does open up again, hopefully sometime next year or the following year, the complaints I've heard is not that it's not a great fair, but like I say, if we can market it better, get more of the people from not only the rest of Riverside County, but certainly coming up from Imperial Valley, a whole lot of areas, because it does have the potential. Again, my experiences have been phenomenal. So if we can do that, make it so that it actually, turns a positive on that, I think that that's right. I do have to give some credit to my colleague, Supervisor Jeffries. He's a tough one to get anything by, and he's shown that in these, and I back him up pretty much on all these because, again, we've got to be clean, and everything's got to be transparent.
Thank you, Supervisor Hewitt. Supervisor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been having this discussion internally with staff for at least the last 3 years regarding the date festival and the fair. And traditionally, the fairgrounds have been where we locate our annual county fair out in Indio. I would just like to point out a couple of things that have made other county fairs successful. San Diego County Fair is one of the top county fairs anywhere. Orange County Fair is very significantly attended fair, which makes money. LA County Fair as well. Almost 2 million residents in Riverside County live in western Riverside County, and we are asking of them to attend the county fair to drive all the way out to the east end of the Coachella Valley. If the county fair was to be, if we could get access to the Paris Fairgrounds, relocated to that location while still supporting the date festival in Indio, we could draw from the 2.2 million residents in San Bernardino County, the 3.2-ish residents of Orange County, the 3.4 million residents of San Diego County, and among that 2 million that reside in western Riverside County. I believe with the right kind of management, our fair could actually become a moneymaker and be accessible to more people who would get exposed to everything that Riverside County has to offer. I make my comments in the hope that going forward, when we look for solutions that prove that there's black ink at the bottom as opposed to red ink, that we consider every option and we don't just immediately dismiss certain things because it's the way we always did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Washington, everyone as well, my colleagues, for bringing up the concerns that you have with the fairgrounds. Believe me, I've heard you all through the last couple of years and have been working with the Fair Board to think through what potentially is possible and what are the options. And so my hope is that there is a plan that we can come up with that, quite frankly, as I mentioned earlier, is one in which we do work with a private entity. And there are entities out there that do exist that potentially would be willing. And so that would be one. And just as I mentioned earlier, I also think that you will be receiving a call or you will be visited by the board membership to talk to you about options, in which I encourage them to do so, because I think it's important that you all have your voices heard as well on that front. And I don't mind if we do decide to say that we would like to have another fair, if you will, or another festival, if you will, in another area within the county of Riverside. I think I understand the distance. I get that. But I will also be requesting that we continue this long-standing tradition that's been going on for over 75 years in which back home it's actually cultural, historical, and also very traditional. So with that, appreciate the points that were made, and I think it's approved as recommended, 5-0. And I think we're ready to move on to item 3.12. And Supervisor